In the April 24th, 1991 episode of Later with Bob Costas, it was obvious that Robert Duvall clicked with Costas over the fact that he could tell he was being interviewed by somebody that respected him, his work, and had done his homework or had watched his career for years. And as evidenced by the fact that the conversation turned into 3 episodes. This is the first of 3 focused upon Duvall's work with Francis Ford Coppola, both on Apocalypse Now and the Godfather series. They discuss why Duvall chose not to participate in Godfather 3. It was about money, integrity, acting to act, not acting to earn money. And he talked about working with Marlon Brando and Brando's cue cards and the process of him getting his lines. And Al Pacino's discussed quite a bit. And ironic that money was the holdup on the project, the latest project Duvall spoke about, Convicts, that he deemed in a state of bankruptcy. But superb conversation, superb interview. And you can tell when a guest grooves with Costas. It's incredible television. Enjoy.
Thanks for staying up later. Robert Duvall is with us tonight and tomorrow. The great Santini and Tender Mercies and Apocalypse Now and MASH and Lonesome Dove on television and The Godfather 1 and 2. And do we have time to get to all of this in 2 shows? Absolutely not. But we'll cover as much as we possibly can in these 2 half hours. And I guess the question people would want me to ask off the top, why didn't you do Godfather 3?
Well, I think everybody did it for money. I mean, why wait 15 years to do a sequel or whatever you call the 3rd one? You know, and they waited that long, so obviously it must be for money, because why wait that long? So when there have been a lot of stories, and what I've told certain people, here's the real deal. This is the way it happened. If they offer somebody 5 times what they offer me, that's totally unacceptable. If they offered them 2 to 3 times more, which they didn't, that would be acceptable but not ideal, but I would accept it. But they didn't do that. If they offer 5 times, then that's unacceptable, and that's what happened. So it did boil down to economics.
So Pacino was going to get 5 times more?
Yes.
And
I felt it was, you know, why even do it? Coppola said because I didn't want to do secondary parts anymore, which is not true. And that I wanted a great big bunch of money, which is true to a point. You know, I just wanted some slice of the pie. Otherwise, why do it? Because everybody was doing it for money. And when you see the movie, it is not as good as the first 2. I don't care what anybody says. It's not as good as the first 2.
Did you know it wasn't going to be, or did you withhold judgment until you saw it?
No, I didn't know. When I saw it, it was okay, but it wasn't as good. I mean, I thought the premise was very interesting. You know, organized crime connected with the Vatican. You know, it's a very complex and kind of sophisticated, you know, premise to go from. And it interested me to a point, but then when I did see it, I just felt that for whatever reasons, I didn't think it was as good. And everybody I've talked to, except Francis, says that.
I heard Coppola on Larry King, and he said he laid out pretty much the same reasons as you just did from his perspective. Yeah. But he also made it clear that all things being equal, he wanted you.
Yeah, and I would maybe have liked to have done it, but, you know, it was one of those things. It was 15 years later, and it was like it had been done. So I didn't really see any point to do it again, other than to do as well as you could do, a good script with good feeling, good camaraderie. But it was for money. I'm sorry. They did it for money.
You can make a pretty good case that, in a way, the Tom Hagen character that you played in Godfather 1 and 2, the foster son, who was kind of like the low-key one.
Right.
In a way, that's the natural thread from 2 to 3, even though it's a long leap, because you were the guy that was sort of helping them maneuver their way through the legitimate world. Is that fair to say?
Yes. And probably since Sonny died in the first one, Sonny Corleone, and Marlon Brando's character was done away with, I mean, then, you know, there had to be an emphasis with Tom Hagen eventually. But, you know, Coppola's a very creative guy, a very inventive guy. He can go many ways, because he's basically a writer to begin with. So script-wise, he can go many ways. But I would think the natural way to have gone, possibly in some avenues, in some ways, would have been with Tom Hagen.
Guys like you and Pacino had your reputation still in the making when you got together to do the first Godfather. How intimidated were you by Brando?
Not intimidated, but with a good, healthy respect. You know, I had worked with Brando before on The Chase and had met him. And, you know, I think many young actors in America, you know, at one time looked up to Brando, maybe still, you know, and I think that served the project. We all sat around in a rehearsal up on Patsy's restaurant on the Upper East Side, you know, up in East Harlem. And we sat as a family and ate and talked about the project. And Brando was at the head of the table, you know, and he was there. It was great. And I was over here, and Sonny, Jimmy, who's great to work with, Jimmy Caan, and Al. And I think we deferred to him in a healthy way without being intimidated, you know, because we were coming into our own. And, you know, I think you have heroes when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
I was with somebody recently that said he never had a hero. He's a great horseman. He never had you know, on the circuit, the Grand Prix rider. In his book, he said he never had a hero. And he's a great rider, but you know, I always felt it's okay to have heroes when you're young. And as you get older and develop, maybe you don't have as many. But I think Brando was a hero to many people. Maybe good and bad, but I think he was a hero in a way. And that served the fictional as well, you know, coming from reality.
Was he as good at that point, early 70s when you did The Godfather, was he as good as you thought he would be?
I think so, yeah. You know, you'd seen him do wonderful things, you know. It's amazing to me how he can read his lines and do a performance. Ever since The Chase, you know, he pastes these lines on somebody's forehead and puts them down here. And during one scene, we had to cut because he had his lines all pasted out for The Godfather. We took him, when he wasn't looking, we put a wedding invitation. Well, he couldn't see it, so they had to cut and everything. And then when he did the scene with Pacino out, you know, outside when he's warning him, oh, there's like this. He had billboards painted, tree, oh, no, and he'd look, you know, and he's a master at it. I did a TV show once where I tried. I didn't know my lines. I had to shut down for the day. I couldn't do it.
You know who you look like when you do Brando? You look like Peter Boyle.
Peter Boyle.
The combination of the way you twist up your face and start doing Brando, you sort of remind me of Peter Boyle.
Yeah. But, no, it's great working with Marlon, you know. He's a talented guy.
As played by Brando, Don Corleone had an almost saintly, certainly heroic aspect to him. Do you agree with that kind of approach to the character?
I totally disagree with that. Brando said the head of the mafia is no worse than the head of DuPont or the head of General Motors. Well, that may be, but you may go away and lose your career with the head of DuPont, the head of General Motors. You may lose a lot. You may be ruined if they want to excommunicate you, but you don't lose your life one-to-one, and there's the difference. And to me, they're not as bad because they don't kill one-to-one the way those guys do. And Brando's a great actor, what can I say? But like I was told by a guy that knew Lucky Luciano and his father, they traveled all around Sicily when he was a little boy. They took him around. It was a great privileged thing to be taken around by the head of the organized crime, and his father was in organized crime. But he said one time he can remember his father just like out of the blue arbitrarily just turning the dinner table over in a fit of I would have liked to have seen that from someone like Brando's character. I'd like to have seen that one-to-one violence that's there, you know.
And
you can't play him like an administrative guy.
He didn't want to do it, or Coppola didn't see it as his vision?
I don't know. I think he didn't want to say the line that a man with a briefcase can steal more or is more lethal than 100 men with guns, pertaining to my character. If you really think that the head of the DuPont is as bad as the head of the mafia, then play him bad. You know, I think it was muted that way. I mean, Marlon's a great actor. What can I say? He's a truly amazingly gifted man. But you know, you got to show. You really got to show. If you're going to show that, you really got to show it. And maybe there wasn't as much in evidence as there should be. I think it's a romantic treatment of that subject matter. But I think what Coppola did was brilliant. There's one executive who said, "Well, I helped with this film. I did this. I did that." The film would have been made as long as it was under, you know, directed by Coppola. It could have been under Disney. It could have been under anybody's auspices as long as he was at the helm. And he did tremendous work, and I think they are American classics. I think they're, I don't think they maybe at times have it's interesting because two of your top directors are Italian-Americans, Scorsese and I think I think right now Scorsese's more in he's a little more productive and a little more
in bloom right now.
Yeah, in bloom. I think for whatever reasons there's been a waning in Coppola's career. But his early work, you know, was tremendous, and yet, on the other hand, what Scorsese's done is a little more of the real nitty-gritty of those guys. I think, once again, maybe it's a little bit of a romantic slice of life, the guys in The Godfather, but tremendous movie making, I think. I turned on Godfather 2 maybe 2 months ago down, you know, all by myself where I have a little farm in Virginia, and I said, oh yeah, that's Godfather 2. I was in that, I remember this, I said, I'm switching channels. Well, an hour and a half later, I didn't switch one channel. I mean, this movie really held me. And this is tremendous movie making, I said, and it's been many a year since it was made. So those two were, I mean, you know, is about as good as you can do.
Another Coppola film you were in was Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Kilgore.
Right.
And the line that...
Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore.
Lieutenant Colonel, sorry, didn't want to demote him. The line everybody remembers is him kind of inhaling and saying, I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah, people come up to me on the street today like, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, like I never knew it and forgot it after I said it, like, ha ha, I got something you don't know. Like, okay, pal, like enough's enough. I hear it so much. But I like that character, yeah. There was somebody else slated to play it, and I said, look, Francis, I'll ask you one time. I would love to play that guy. I know he's written as a much bigger guy than I am, but, and then he came to me, and, you know, and it was, I really liked playing it a lot.
I read somewhere where you had a dispute with Coppola about a scene that was cut where Kilgore saved the life of a little Vietnamese boy. Yeah. And you wanted it in there because it showed a contradiction of character, which is true of all of us in one way or another.
Absolutely. And he cut it. To this day, I'll never know why he cut it. And it wasn't so much a controversy because the movie didn't come out till, what, 3 years later. Had it come out 6 months later or a year, I would have been more vehement about it. But it came out so much, it took so long for the movie to come out that when it came out, I felt it was no longer my movie because it was his, because it had been so long. But to this day, I mean, they cut to a reconnaissance plane, and here was a guy who saved the life of a baby, probably just had killed the father, sent the mother with it in the helicopter back, and while he's doing it, he's looking at the waves to see if they're good for what kind of surfing, you know. And it was Francis's idea to put it in there. We had heard it from certain technical advisors, how these interesting contradictions happened. You know, I mean, not to make somebody all one color or whatever. And to me, it was strange to cut it out. I mean, I don't know why. I still don't know why.
Do you think he feared, or somebody put a bug in his ear, that if you show this guy to be sympathetic in any way, if you mitigate the feeling that the audience has about him, it's going to compromise whatever you've built up emotionally in the audience? They won't be able to handle ambivalent feelings about the guy.
Maybe I always felt it was like, maybe I got paranoid. It's a little pressure from his liberal friends in San Francisco. Oh, we got to make this guy all one. The guy like that wouldn't save a baby's life, which people do. People aren't black and white. I don't know. Maybe the character was getting too much emphasis and it wasn't about that guy. That was the implication. What they told me, that was the movie kind of stopped a little bit there, and they wanted to keep it going and not give too much emphasis to Kilgore. But as long as you're emphasizing him, I don't know why you don't put that in. It didn't make sense to me. So he said, I'll put it in when we put it on television, you know. He knew it meant a lot to me, you know, but I never got any kind of answer as to why he cut it out. There was just no, and there was no reason why it would be cut out. It wasn't ugly visually, and it certainly wasn't ugly logically that a guy would do this. I mean, people, you know, people aren't all, and even people call the guy crazy, which he wasn't. It was like adult day camp in war. You know, a guy breaking up the monotony by doing fun and games because he knows his job so well he can do that. The surfing and everything. It's not crazy. It's just like men doing bizarre things as children when it was in a life or death kind of perimeter. But I don't know why I cut it out.
When you're in a situation which by definition is insane, short of doing deliberately vicious and cruel things, not much can be classified as crazy in that context.
I found out when I went back, I was in the Philippines for, I think, 6 weeks, and I came back 6 months later to do the first half of my part for 3 weeks, because I got it with Brando, and it took a long time to get it filmed with Dennis Hopper and everything, and they finally got it done, and then I came back. So in the meantime, I had a chance to talk to some air cavalry people, and there were some bizarre things that went on. I heard that the head general of the air cavalry used to deer hunt twice a week along the Cambodian border from the helicopter. And the helicopter, and he got killed, and that's how he was killed. The thing got crashed into a tree. And one of the technical advisors said he was with the air cavalry, and the guy would fly into North Vietnam and try to hook a bicycle with the runner of the thing, and they would shoot at him, and he'd hover, and he'd come back until he could finally get in there and steal that bicycle. They would do crazy things, the air cavalry. They were on dope, they were on this and that. And the guy that I talked to said, in the compound where the mechanics worked on the helicopters, they didn't allow anybody on any kind of dope or marijuana or anything. But in the field, it was going on like crazy. So these were like a wild bunch of guys. They have in Fort Hood, I think there's a museum dedicated to the air cavalry, and they actually wore. The inaccuracy was that every officer should have had on a cavalry hat and spurs, going back to the 7th Cavalry in the last century. And I know I've seen things in the newspaper that say that the Marines and certain straight-laced protocol people say that these things didn't go on, but I've talked to air cavalry people that said they did go on. A very bizarre way they fought the war, And so this guy was not crazy, but maybe the culmination of the bizarreness of that whole air cavalry mentality.
You're known for not necessarily sharing the consensus view about your own work, even if it's a compliment. Vincent Canby called you the American Olivier once, a New York Times critic, and shortly after that you said you weren't all that impressed with Olivier.
I said that?
Yeah, at least I read it. Who knows if you really said it?
Well, he was a very talented man. I mean, I'm not saying he was my favorite actor, but he was a tremendous actor in certain ways. It's like certain actors do things better than other people. He was a great tap dancer as an actor. I don't think he was a great emotional actor, but he had tremendously facile gifts. Did all the Shakespeare and everything. But the thing that he liked the most, and I saw closing night on Broadway, was when he played Archie Rice in The Entertainer, which much of the performance was very arresting and very magnetic. But whatever Vincent Canby said was a compliment, and I accept it. I don't know if that's true anymore. I still want to work and progress, but you run into dead ends in your career sometimes. You can't get things off the ground that you want to get off the ground, and I don't have the leverage that some people do to do that. So.
Are you not, despite all the acclaim for your acting ability, you're not a bankable star in the way that Pacino or De Niro or certainly Tom Cruise or someone like that is?
I don't think I'm as bankable as they are, no. I have a movie now that I'm very proud of that we did, another Horton Foote project, because I tend to work good with Horton Foote. I've known him for many, many years, and we like to work with one another. I start out To Kill a Mockingbird, and then The Chase, Tender Mercies, Tomorrow from a Faulkner short story. And then we did a film called Convicts a little over a year ago. Well, it's in a state of bankruptcy, so I don't know when it's going to come out.
I know.
Hopefully it'll come out, because we had nice high hopes for it on a certain level, maybe not a big box office level, And if I'm not in great big box office hits, then that's fine too. I'm maybe not a big bankable guy, but that's okay.
Accommodations furnished by the Universal City Hilton and Towers. Make your next stay in Los Angeles a memorable one with our spacious rooms, international cuisine, and the attention of a friendly, experienced staff.
Half hour's gone for tonight. Robert Duvall is back with us tomorrow night. We talk about the great Santini, Tender Mercies, and whatever else we can cram into 30 minutes. Until then, go to bed. See you later.